Welcome to Real Vision. Today, we're talking with Michael Rogers of the Block Research about the digital assets, data, and infrastructure landscape. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ash. Happy to be here for the third time. Pretty comfortable so far, and really enjoy everything that you guys provide to us. It's really a great alternative platform for information, content, alternative investments. I mean, such as digital assets. It's really a great match, and I'm happy to see that you guys just had a recent series fundraising, and that you're going to be making a lot more great content and shining light on an industry that really does deserve it. And that was really the whole reason for this report.
Michael, thank you for saying that. And let me return the compliment by saying you are one of our favorite guests here at Real Vision, because when you show up, you come to play the game in sports metaphor. You literally show up with the deepest dives and analysis, and we're always happy to walk through this. By the way, every report that Michael Rogers writes, you should read literally cover to cover. But if you don't have time to do that, the next best thing is pouring a glass of red wine, sitting on the sofa when Mike comes on Real Vision and literally walks through the report. It's like discovering Cliff Notes in 10th grade English.
Thank you. I'm really flattered. I appreciate that, Ash.
So first, we should say the report we're going to do some analysis on today comes to us from the Block Research, commissioned by Luca and S&P Dow Jones Indices.
Yes, exactly. And it was written long ago. My teaching is not my own. It comes from the one who sent me. And really, those are the ones that sent us. We really do appreciate our sponsors. So thank you again to Luca and S&P Dow Jones Indices. Thank you, Luca and the team there, for providing feedback. And thank you, S&P Dow Jones Indices, for really helping distribute the report through your global network. Also, thank you to all of those that participated in the interview process, specifically Clara from Kaiko, and also Alan Curtis. Thank you so much from Radar. He really helped me get a mental framework for this landscape, because this was the most challenging report I've ever written, Ash. I don't have an IT background, and that's the thing with digital assets. It's a convergence of so many different knowledge sets. Right. And fields. And I have traditional financial services experience. That's what I went to school for. That's what my traditional training was in. I've had to learn more about the IT and computer science field over the past several years as an independent consultant, and then as a research analyst at the Block for the past year. But this, I really had to get to the root of it. That's always the goal of my research reports, is to get to the root and then sprout out from there. And right. Really, I think that you can see, and that everybody that's seen the report and has enjoyed it thus far can see, that we're looking at an area that doesn't really get a lot of light shined on it, that really is one of the most important pieces of the digital assets ecosystem, because these are really the companies that are doing all the back end work and doing all the things that are so important to make sure that the things that are in the spotlight, like say a company like Coinbase that's publicly traded now. Congratulations to everybody at Coinbase. It was a big achievement for our industry. But these are some of the things, and the Bitcoin ticker price that you see on CNBC. These are some of the things, like how people actually see that price, for instance, that I learned. That actually comes from Coinmetrics, which is one of the market data providers and companies there. So you get to see all of the back end, and we're going to take people behind the scenes with this report, as well as this interview explaining the report, so that they could get a better understanding of what actually goes on behind the scenes for the things that they see every day on, say, Twitter, or now that they're starting to see in the traditional financial services companies.
Well, it's so interesting. There are very few people in this space who have backgrounds in finance and computer science sort of academically simultaneously. That's a very rare sort of breed of person. You come to us, as you said, from the financial services side, and from the academic finance side. You're a CPA. You spent a lot of time thinking about the way finance and financial services work. But it's interesting, and you've gone out and interviewed people to bring this sort of framework to them. So let's jump right in. I'm curious, first of all, the title is kind of a mouthful: digital assets, data, and infrastructure. What does it mean? Why is it significant?
So digital assets, data, and infrastructure. Basically, we're talking about the bottom root, the actual base layer of what everybody is seeing right now with all these applications that are being built and all these tokens, the prices that you see. What are the networks that they actually operate on? How do people get the information that is necessary? It's all, as one of our Alan Curtis, I wrote in the introduction, and I kind of filtered a little bit. He said it in a sense of, we said it's a mess, meaning blockchain data. He really said more of it's a cluster, you know what, but we had to keep it PG. But basically, blockchain data, a lot of people have the conception, and basically anybody that may be a layman or first hearing about it, is that it's open source, okay, and all blockchain data is publicly accessible. Yes, that might be true, but how helpful and useful is that data? Really, that's where it is a cluster, you know what, because realistically, this data, like raw oil or just say a natural resource from the ground, is not useful in that raw emission form. It has to be extracted. It has to be cleansed. It has to be stored. It has to be transported. It has to be altered into a form that is intelligible, that people can actually use to make decisions. And this whole report is about the infrastructure, the computing infrastructure that's being set up in order to do that, in order to extract this data from the blockchains themselves, as well as from the exchanges and all of the market data that of these digital assets that are being traded on the Coinbase and some of the other exchanges. So we're talking about two different types of data here. We're talking market data and blockchain data. And that comes together and really goes up that pyramid, which is one of the graphics that we have, which is the digital assets data and infrastructure hierarchy of needs, similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You need the bottom layers, and once you have those fulfilled, you go up the pyramid. And at the top of the pyramid is basically intelligible insights and research, which is what we at the Block Research do.
This is a really interesting graphic. We could probably linger on it for a few moments just to take it all in, because it is sort of very detailed, and it does give you a sense of the layers of complexity that this ecosystem is built on. I know you say, I believe in the very first line of the report, that fundamentally what we're talking about here are miners and exchanges at the very base layer. But when you look at this sort of schema for thinking about it, it's very clear that this is an incredibly complex ecosystem.
Yes, and we tried to simplify it so that people could understand it better, specifically those that are in traditional financial services. That's why I'm big on analogies, really. Once you really understand something, I think that you should be able to explain it to somebody that's a 5-year-old. I'm not really a big fan of jargon. I feel like it's exclusive. So essentially the analogy that I made, this was my solo album, I guess you could say, the third report. And I'm very proud of it because it's one of the best things that I've ever written. And I've written for a book before too. And this was so challenging, but like really similar to Michael Lewis, being able to make something understandable to everybody that can relate. That's really one of my goals is here, and highlighting the people too and the companies here.
Yeah, and let's actually take a look, because you also have a great layout of the space from a company perspective. I think we can pull that one up on screen as well. This gives you a sense of also, I think, how richly ramified this ecosystem is, and how many organizations are critical in your conception of it to understanding the general layout of the space.
Yeah, and we put 42 firms in our sample set from 4 different verticals. So there are a lot of other firms out there. I'm one person, and I couldn't analyze every firm in the industry. Basically, I went through everybody's website, their documentation. I gathered data from, what basically how many Twitter followers they have, things of that nature, how much money have they raised. And I went through all of their documentation, online stuff, to write original descriptions on all of them. So if anybody was excluded, we apologize, but we made it clear that it was a sample set from 4 verticals. So the first vertical is infrastructure. The second vertical, we have staking, which is we view as an extension of blockchain infrastructure. Actually, one of the biggest blockchain infrastructure companies, Bison Trails, we specifically put in the staking section because they even say it in their developer documentation. And Bison Trails was actually bought out by Coinbase. I'm sure many are aware. It was one of the biggest acquisitions in blockchain over the past couple of years. Basically, they specifically say in their developer documentation that they are staking infrastructure, and they make staking, which you'll see in the staking part of the report, that was brand new to this year's report, because there was another report that my predecessors, Larry Cermak and Steven Zhang, did last year. We added staking this year because it was one of the biggest things to emerge during the last digital assets bear market. And that's the thing. Each bear market really brings about the next innovation where people are building things. And staking emerged out of the 2018 and 2019 bear market, where it grew to be hundreds of billions of dollars worth of value being basically put into lending and borrowing protocols to just basically earn interest. That's the whole idea behind staking. And really, we were very grateful to Curtis O from Stake for really helping shine some light on that area as well. And the other area that we have on the other two verticals is on-chain metrics. So those are the companies, as we said, that set up nodes and basically pull this raw, crude blockchain data. Think of it analytically or parallel as those that are pulling raw oil from the ground. They're setting up nodes to pull this raw blockchain data, and then they're filtering it, they're sorting it, they're using their proprietary techniques. Because one of the hardest things that we mentioned in the beginning of the report is there's an inherent lack of standardization across the entire digital assets ecosystem. It's one of the things that really a lot of people don't appreciate how early it still is. Similar to the early days of the internet, where you needed certain standards to be set up in order to standardize everything so that everybody could be moving in the same direction with the internet. And that's where we are right now. Everybody's been basically, and we kind of say this at the end of the report, that it's no longer, just the cypherpunks and the hobbyists. It's really developing into multi-billion and over $2 trillion. That's what the ecosystem reached. And we state that in the beginning of the report. Over $2 trillion in growth year over year is pretty incredible. And that's something that can't be ignored. But in order to get people to move in the same direction, we need more standardization to how do you understand all this data that's being emitted. And that's what those on-chain metrics companies do. And then the market data companies do the same thing, but instead of doing it for the actual protocols and network itself, they do it for exchange data. So basically what activity is going on when people are trading back and forth on exchanges, over the counter. And also, if you want to get specific about protocols, DEXs, so decentralized exchanges, which technically I categorize it a little different from on-chain data because it's specifically market data. So what's being traded back and forth. So say I'm like a Uniswap or something like that. And I know that that's kind of a mouthful in there, but it's a complex report. And I just wanted to give an overview of each segment, and then we could break down each one individually.
Hey, if you like this clip, be sure to check out the full interview and more only on realvision.com/crypto. It's 100% free. Sign up now.